I like this most recent change. You guys have gone through a whole series of new task force and really starting to put this together. Can you dive into a little bit of what you guys have coming out with the new BIM standard, kind of how you guys are oriented it?
Yes, there have been three versions of the national BIM standard, and we're getting ready to release version four. It's in the final stages. So you're right. There's been three versions there, and it a lot of people know about it, but it has not necessarily been widely adopted holistically. There's pieces of it that's been adopted. And one example that I think has been widely adopted is the BIM execution planning. Like, so if you talk to almost anyone for a project that's got BIM, if they're serious about it, you probably can find a project execution plan or a BIM execution plan somewhere where people have sat down and figured out, like, these are the applications we're using. This is the how we're going to deliver this information and how this information is going to be able to be exchanged. Some of that work begun at Penn State many years ago, and some others, in academia and in the industry. But that's formally a part of the National BIM standard. So there's a full module or full section coming out in this upcoming version that's devoted to BIM execution planning, with improved templates, improved tools to help people work through that process a little more quickly. So yeah, there are these type of tools that have been there, and then the adoption of some of these tools have been at differing scales. But this idea of diving deeper in BIM, and I think in our discussion we're diving deep enough that we're talking about standards, and that is not necessarily a popular or exciting topic for a lot of people, right? But the fact of the matter is that standards are all around us, right? I mean, we from our TVs being able to transmit the video signal. One of my favorite examples is a cell phone or smartphone, right? Is that I don't all I need to know is your number, or mine, right? I don't need to know what carrier you have or what model phone you have, or even if it's updated to the latest iOS, or what apps you have installed. I just kind of, if I have your number, I can call you and it works, right? Or you have mine, you can text me and it works. And that only works because there's this underlying standard that all those who develop those the apps, the phones, the updating the operating systems are following a set of standards, and that's what makes it work. And that's really what makes and will continue to make technology work in the built environment and across all the stakeholders. So we certainly at the institute put NIBS, we put a high emphasis on standards because that's the underlying network, if you will, that allows us to connect information and share information. And so we continue to push towards open data standards, and that's a big premise behind our national BIM program. It's a big drive behind the national BIM standards, which is a product or the output, or the program is this higher overarching uh, entire program that involves stakeholder engagement and adoption. But no question, standards are important. They're not always exciting to everyone, and the development can be long and arduous. It always lags behind technology, but standards are key to making it happen. I'd love to share just one other analogy of standards. So I was reading about this recently. And I didn't know this, but many engineers would probably know this example. Leading up, to the Civil War, there was the railroad systems that were evolving, right? And you had all these local and regional areas that were, building their own railroad system, to be able to move materials and goods. And of course, that became really an important piece leading up to the Civil War. But what I did not know, and maybe I just didn't pay attention in school, what I did not know is that there was not really a standardized rail gauge. So the distance between the center line of one rail to the distance of the center line of the other rail was not standardized. I did not know that. I was fascinated with this issue that the nation had. And it plagued the nation a little bit even after the Civil War, right? And there was I think there was a British standard of 4 foot 8.5 inches, but then here, there was all these different rail widths. Well, we immediately know that lack of standardization causes issues, right? The more you want to expand that network of the railroad system, it creates more and more issues. And so I dove a little deeper and found that, yeah, people were coming up with all kind of solutions to fix it. Somebody came up with this mechanism that was greatly expensive that detached the cars from off of the wheels and picked it up like a crane and put it over to another one to be able to transfer from one rail system to another. Well, needless to say, that was so expensive it didn't last. And even President Lincoln, at the time wanted to standardize on a 5 foot rail. And I think had already had that fully planned, but then realized that these pieces, just wouldn't connect. Ultimately, as you know, they did standardize on 4 foot 8.5, and that's the standard rail gauge for a traditional rail system. But my point in bringing all that up in a long analogy and long example is that when I'm reading about this, I'm seeing we're doing the same thing with BIM, right? We're like people coming up with all kind of solutions, many of them that are expensive solutions to try to get connect these railways, right? And to connect this network of information, not rail cars, but now we're dealing with information. And so we have a lot that's hit the market, many expensive solutions, but at the heart of it, if we could just get the rails the same width apart, that's the deep dive into BIM. That is that open data standards underneath that all of this is built upon. Then we could more freely share information.